Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoy your break. We decided to continue on and to keep one of the panelists with us. That's Daniel Mezick. You had a pleasure of listening to him later with other panelists, and now he has his own solo session on the topic of acting as an executive coach. So Dan is a Scrum at Scale trainer. He's been coaching executives and teams since 2006. He's an expert on business agility and an author of 3 books on organizational change. So hi again, Dan, and welcome. So this time the floor is only yours. So I think you're muted.
Yes, it's great to be here. Very happy to be here. Thank you for that kind introduction.
Thank you for accepting it. It's our pleasure. So as I said, your talk here is acting as an executive coach. What I like to ask everyone, just to remind them that they can ask questions within the Q&A section on Matchabout during your session, and we will see how much time we have so that we can answer questions at the end of your session. Okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. And so now I'm unmuted, and can I begin? Is it okay?
Yeah, of course.
All right, awesome. So hello everyone. My name is Daniel Mezick. I've been at this Agile stuff and Scrum since 2006. I'm coming to you from my undisclosed location in North Guilford, Connecticut, USA, where I work each day from my home. So this session, this session is about how to be more effective with Scrum. How are we going to actually be more effective inside the organization? So consider this. If you facilitate, if you coach, if you teach, if you mentor, those will get you local optimizations. You'll get team level improvement, but you won't change the system. So to change the system, what you actually need is you need access to decision makers. So how will you actually get this access? That's what this is all about. So can everyone hear okay? I just want to do a check and make sure that we're good. Yeah, are we all right? Okay, good. So what I'd like to do is discuss with you a few things and give you some tips on how to gain influence with executives by first getting access to them, right? So this turns out to be critically important. If you go to the Scrum Guide and you look at the definition of the Scrum Master role, what does it say? It says that the Scrum Master is the Scrum Master leads the organization through its implementation of Scrum. So ask yourself, are you doing that? Are you authorized to do that? And what has to change and be a little bit different for you to lead the organization through its implementation of Scrum? It's probably going to shock you to know that most Scrum implementations, the executives have never read the Scrum Guide. They don't really know Scrum. So, what are we doing about that? So I want to cover basically 3 big ideas, right? What's the profile of a typical executive? What's the profile of a typical org? And what's the profile of a typical coach? And how are we gonna influence executives as a person who does Scrum Master work in the typical company? The very first, and I'm going to give you tools and techniques that are going to help you tremendously in this respect, okay? So the very first thing that I want you to think about is, what book, podcast, or video will you offer your executive to explore? Give them something that pertains to their goals. Give them a podcast, a video, or a book, and see if they go for it, okay? You're going to invite this. When you do this, you have established a foothold in the role of trusted advisor. In other words, you've given yourself a promotion. You're no longer simply the hired help. You're actually a trusted advisor. Why? Because if you lead an executive through some learning, then you're leading the leader, okay? And you are a trusted advisor. They took your advice, they went ahead and they consumed that media, They learned something, and now they're having a conversation with you and learning more about it. Okay, so this is the #1 technique. And I'll come back to this again and again. Okay, so let's discuss leadership. A leader is anyone who influences decisions that affect the whole group. That's any influencer. It doesn't have to be an executive. It's anyone who influences decision makers or makes decisions. Okay, now let's discuss for a moment the typical profile of the typical executive. Okay, the first thing is that executives don't even have time to go to the bathroom. Their time is completely consumed by their job. So the real question here is, how are you going to play to this thing that they're very, very time pressured all the time? Okay, here's another thing that's going on with executives. They're isolated by their high authorization. Okay, when authority's in the room, you're very careful and guarded about what you say, because it could be your job if you say the wrong thing. You yourself could be demoted for saying the wrong things in front of authority. So because of that, it's hard to get a straight answer from people as an executive if they're under the span of your authority. Okay, so that's the first thing that they deal with all the time. The second thing that executives tell themselves is that they need to appear confident at all times, even when they're not. So they have imposter syndrome. Okay, why do I know this? I know this because, in the 90s, I had an organization that had over 50 people that I led for over 10 years. Okay, so I know about this. And I also know from my own coaching, right? The other thing is, while they have to appear confident, they're often in areas where they're dealing with incomplete information, and they have to make a decision based on incomplete information and a best guess. And they're being held accountable to the results of those decisions. Okay, so on the one hand, they have to appear confident. On the other hand, a lot of times they're encountering experiences for the very first time. Okay, so this is a big deal. And then the last thing that I want to tell you about executives, and this is a kind of a secret, they often know far less than you think they know. And they can use an education. And they can also use a friend. Why? Because they're isolated by their very high level of authorization. Okay, so this is the dynamics of the psychology of the executive. And I just want to take a moment now to take a question or two before I move on to some other topics. Is there anyone who has a question on anything that I just presented? So I just want to pause long enough to take a question or two if somebody has one. Okay. So if there's no questions, that's okay. All right, let's move on. Now remember, I told you you're going to invite them to watch a video, read a book, or listen to a podcast. Okay, why? Because you want to be a trusted advisor. That's why. Why? Because the Scrum Guide says that you are responsible for leading the organization through its implementation of Scrum. That's what it says. So how are you going to implement that thing in the Scrum Guide if you can't get access, right? This is how you get access, by inviting the executive to learn something from you, okay? All right, now I'm going to show you a tip. I'm going to show you a practice. Here's the practice. When you're communicating with an executive in a conversation, when they look away, I want you to stop talking. And when the executive says, "Oh no, please keep going," they're on their cell phone, they're doing something else, they're doing 3 different things while they're talking to you. I want you to just say, "No, listen, I can come back. This is actually really important for your goals and your objectives for the organization. I'll come back later. We could do it tomorrow." And train them to give you their full attention when you're talking, okay? Executives are under a lot of time pressure and they multitask all day long. That's why you need to get in and get out, okay? You get in a couple minutes, no more than 5 minutes, and you're out. That's it. You're not going to be asking them for a lot of time. That means you have to be super direct and explain what's in it for them. But before you even do that, you're going to have to teach them to listen when you're talking. Okay, so you're going to look away when they look away, you're going to stop talking. Now, here's the science. Here's the science behind this. Okay, there's something called the visual dominance ratio, and this is something we teach in the acting as an executive class. It's a nonverbal indicator of a person's status based on eye contact. Okay, you can look this up, visual dominance ratio. Look it up on Wikipedia. Okay, let me talk with you about it now. You're an executive, you're talking, I listen. You talk for 1 minute. I make eye contact with you for 45 seconds of that minute, 75% of the time. That's the baseline, okay? Now, unconsciously, subconsciously, when you're talking, this executive will often not look you in the eye for the same fraction of the total time. That's not good for your standing. Okay, you want to be, you want to take the stance of a trusted advisor, not the hired help, even if you're an employee. So I want you to stop talking when they look away and teach them to listen to you when you're talking. Okay. Now I want to tell you a story about this. I actually coached this fellow that I'm going to show a video of in a minute. It's a 2-minute video, and this will show you how good it can be once you do get some influence and they do trust you. Okay. This executive was probably the smartest executive or the quickest learner that I ever coached. And if any of you have coached executives and managers, you probably already know. Sometimes you have to repeat yourself a couple times. How many people have realized this, that you say it once and a lot of times they don't get it, you have to say it a couple times, right? Okay, so I started this pattern of repeating some things that I already taught. And I noticed that this fellow would look away when I was saying certain things. So I started to pay attention. When is he looking away? And he was looking away when I was repeating myself. So of course, when executives look away, I stop talking, right? So he picked up on this, and every time I repeated myself, he would look away and I would stop talking. So after a few days of this, I said, Jake, I noticed every time I repeat myself, you look away. He's like, yeah, that's because when I look away, you stop talking. And we just had a tremendous laugh about this, okay? It was great. So what I want to do now is I want to show you the video of this fellow and some work I did with him. And to set the context, he sent me around the world to do 8 whole group events around the world to help him change his culture, to install and get support for 10 core values, which he was busy implementing, and he had a bit of a stall. I came in, developed a trusted advisor role with this man, and he sent me all over the world to do 8 open space events around the world for his engineering team, 900 people under the span of his authority. Sent me to Austria, sent me to places in the USA. I want to show you this vid so you can have a sense of how it goes, okay? So here's the vid. I'm going to play it. It's just a 2-minute video, and just listen to this executive and his level of anxiety, and how he went and did it anyway. That's because I coached him. He trusted me. We did this thing together. Okay, well, let's go take a look at this. I hope everyone can see this and hear it okay. Here we go.
At Nuance Communications, my name's Jake O'Leary. I run an R&D organization that's just over 900 people globally. We produce AI, speech, virtual assistants, and other capabilities. A little over a year ago, we started a journey of redefining our culture. I saw that we got to a point where our success and progress started to come to a bit of a halt. And I just so happened to crash into the open space concept, attending an event, obviously culture, takes a long time to manifest and change within an organization. The light bulb just went on that in open space as a way to drive this cultural transformation, to create the culture that we're looking for. And from the moment we did it, everyone was engaged and it just worked out. It was positive. I think people were surprised. I was surprised, to be honest with you. The moment that we got past the open circle, the moment that the board started to fill up and people started to submit topics, and then we started to see what I consider healthy topics and engagement was there, I immediately, obviously, I felt some sense of relief. And then by the wrap-up circle, at the end of the event, and after having to attend it personally, hearing people's closing comments, it turned to me in terms of happiness and joy. It was a success, and it was a success in that here was a new approach to solving problems and bringing people together to collaborate and share ideas. And this new approach, yielded benefit. The people that participated in it saw value. The people that participated in it contributed. And I then started to build more champions for this open space idea ultimately. And with each open space event, and as each leader sat through those events, one after the next, I kept hearing about the success stories, and it just repeated itself each and every event. That was the moment I knew we had something special. And so you had to kind of embrace the fact that in this situation, let the organization lead the way forward and let leaders rise up to drive things forward. It's extremely important not just to show the organization that leadership cares, leadership's present, leadership's just as engaged, but I actually think it's critically important for the leader themselves.
So that whole thing started, 900 people across the world. He sent me to go do these meetings. It all started with this. Okay, by leading them through some learning, having a conversation. So the next thing that I want to offer you is this: if you're an employee in a company, you're not a consultant. You're a full-time employee. You can still develop a trusted advisor role with authority figures by doing some of the things that I'm teaching today. So one of them obviously is to do this, right? To invite them to be led through some learning, a small piece of learning. The next thing that happens is, the other tip I gave you is stop talking when they look away. Teach them to listen to you and be very sensitive about the amount of time you have. Do not take up the executive's time. Now, you might be wondering, how do I get their attention? The way you're going to get their attention is by figuring out their motivational style. Okay, this is another tip, the third tip I want to offer you. Some people go towards their goals. Other people are repelled by what gives them pain. Okay, so in NLP, this is called the toward orientation, which is goal seeking, or the away orientation, which is like the avoidance of pain or things that hurt. Okay, so I want you to profile the target executive. Are they an away from type or a toward type? Okay, if they're away from, then you want to motivate them by the 7 bad things that are not going to happen if they take your advice. Okay, and then if they're a goal seeking type, then you're going to tell them the 7 great things that are going to occur that are positive and in the direction of their goals if they take your advice. Okay, so you always have to frame it according to what's in it for them. You have to give a very good why. So there's another tip for you. Are they away or are they toward in their orientation? And in general, you should profile the exact, are they a morning person or are they more of a afternoon or night type of a person? Try to figure out the best time to approach them. Okay. So all of these things are critically important as you do your work. Why? Because in the Scrum Guide, it says that you are a leader in the implementation of Scrum in your company. So, the real question is, how are you going to do that without influencing decision makers, right? So if you go and take a shot at it, you're going to find that this can happen for you. Okay. Now, a couple of other things that I want to point out here is that Scrum is actually, it's actually a game. And you probably know that already. If you were to go to the Scrum Guide right now and look at the cover of the Scrum Guide, go look at the subtext on the Scrum Guide, okay? The Scrum Guide says that that Scrum Guide is the definitive rules of the game. Okay, so actually, executive leaders are in the business of game design. When we drop in Scrum, that's a prefabricated game design that we're using, and games are extremely engaging. So we have to teach this to executives. We need to teach them that the decision rights in Scrum need to be implemented if we're going to have, the kind of results that we want. And you do that through accessing executives. Okay, so now I want to give you a couple of other tips, but I want to pause long enough for questions before I move on. So can I take a question or two?
Yeah, okay. We have 2 questions so far.
Okay.
One question is, what do you do with executives who think they know everything and that there is nothing that you can teach them?
Well, remember, they believe they have to appear confident, okay? They believe that. So there's a lot of posturing that goes on. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to not give up on them. You're going to continue to offer them learning, short, small, profitable learning experiences. And you're going to look for an executive that is willing to be led through some learning. So I want you to be careful in who you pick. I want you to study them and then offer them something. And then when you have one executive who trusts you, that's the entree into the leadership system, okay? You will get access to the rest of them. So I do not want you to go looking for just whoever's in authority over you. I want you to look around for the most willing one and then use them as a kind of entree into the leadership system. In America, there was a show on TV called the Dr. Phil Show, and Dr. Phil would have people on the show that had terrible problems in life. He was a psychologist, and they would describe how they didn't want to change and didn't want to learn anything new. And he would say, well, your dog ran away, you lost your house, you lost your job, you were married, you're not married anymore, you're living on the street, here's my question for you. And then he would pause and he would go, how's that working for you? So I want you to actually do that. One of the things that we need to talk about based on this question is challenging the executive. I'm going to tell, if I have time, I'll tell a story later about an executive who came up to me, and here's what he said. He said, you know what? Consultants routinely waste my time. You didn't do that today. So you know what? If you need a reference from a C-level person, you can call me anytime, and I'll give you a reference. Okay, so that's because I challenged that executive. And he actually came into a classroom. He came into the classroom late. Everyone told me to look out for this guy. His name was Liam. I didn't know who Liam was as I started the class. It was with executives. The whole front row was empty except for 2 guys, and he sat in the front row, and he showed up late, and I knew it was him. And he kind of came in with his shoulders carped like this, and he's like, don't just ignore me. I'm just showing up late, but that's okay. Just ignore me. I'm going to sit down, kind of a thing. And then he spread his stuff out, and pretty soon he's sitting there like this. And I'm like, oh, this is the guy. This is the guy right here. And he goes like this. He goes, I have a question. Why should I give a shit about anything you have to say? That's what he said to me. And I paused for effect. I waited about 20 seconds, and I moved a little closer to him, and I said, I can't answer that question. Only you can. So I'll make a deal with you. If this is a big waste of your time, I know your time's valuable. I don't want to waste it. Just leave at the next break. It's at 10 o'clock. It's in less than 30 minutes. Why don't you just leave if it's not working for you? But if it is, how about you come back after the break? And he goes, okay, let's do this. He really liked that. He liked that answer, and it was a challenge answer, okay? So remember, executives have their time routinely wasted. You're not going to do that. And number 2, you need to learn to challenge them, because that's going to differentiate you from the others. Because everyone else is careful and guarded around executives, and they need a straight answer. Okay, so there's that. Well, I hope that answers the question okay. Was there another question?
Yeah, there was another question. Do you want me to read you now or?
Sure, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, so the another one question is, some executives have hunger for power and like to intimidate people to obey them. How to get to such executives?
The short answer, you're not going to be intimidated by them. You're going to have to learn to stand on the strength of your convictions and also take up the profile of someone with executive presence. Now, executive presence can be taught, and it involves a bunch of behaviors you're not going to do and a whole bunch of behaviors you're going to do, okay? So one of them is you stop talking when they look away. The other one is you don't waste their time. You tell them what's in it for them, paying careful attention to their profile. Are they an away type person or a toward type goal-seeking person? Okay. If they're just tyrants, well, you want to find someone else to target. I don't have an easy answer for you about this, but here's my best answer. If you put them on a direct experience where they actually learn something, not a lecture, you will actually end up in a far better place. So for example, that same guy in the video there, we would meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 6 weeks for 1 hour per day with 14 global leaders who ran his 900-person global engineering team. And I put them on a direct experience where we walked through statements in the Scrum Guide, and we then graded the individual's level of support for the statement and their perceived score for the whole leadership team. So for example, over Zoom, 1 hour, 7 a.m. in the morning, 14 executives, we put up the statement. For the product owner to be successful, everyone in the organization must respect his or her decisions. And then the executive rated their level of support for that statement and what they perceive to be the leadership team's level of support for that statement. And we had that conversation. Okay, so that's an example of an experience where you can teach someone who, you know, is sort of a, you know, like you say, a power person, put them on a direct experience. This is far better. I've got some meeting formats. One of them is a modified fishbowl I call the authority circle. It's where the executive leaders sit in the middle of a ring of seats, and there's an empty blank seat in the middle. In the first phase, they discuss a hot topic, a hot issue among themselves as if nobody's listening. In the second phase, people from the outer ring come in and they sit where authority is sitting in the center, and they engage with them on the topic. Okay, that opens up about this much space for conversation, and it teaches execs that they're giving away nothing in terms of power and authority by opening up about this much space for a conversation. Okay, so that's my answer. Put them on a direct experience where they learn not to be threatened by a few small changes that will be enormously positive for employee engagement. Okay, is there another question, or can we keep going?
No, we can keep going. We have 15 more. 15
okay,
more
great. So I can just teach a little bit more, and then I'll take the questions, okay? And maybe we can even, we'll open up space for questions and we'll see. Okay. So one more thing I want you to look up is the term is Isopraxism, Isopraxism, Isopraxism. Okay, so animals, even reptiles, you know, very low-grade creatures, they actually engage in mirroring behavior to signal the absence of threat. So they're signaling that they're not aggressive when they mirror. All right, so we all do this. Salesmen know about this mirroring thing. You want to use the same language that they're using. do not show up with a new lexicon or a new glossary of terms for them to learn. Speak to them in their own language. This is a non-threatening signal. Okay, it also allows you to improve your signal to noise ratio, to increase the level of signal. If you go off on self-organization and local optimizations and all the other lingo around Agile, it's going to get lost in translation. You've got to use the cultural language that the organization has. So start to figure out what are the terms and words that they use, and then use them in the same way. If you don't do that, you will get lost in translation. And remember, you only have a few minutes, so you better be really good at getting your point across. When you want to get your point across, here's what I do. Number one, state in definite terms what's in it for them, paying attention to the away or the toward orientation. Second thing, remind them that you don't want to waste their time and that you're going to be direct and brief about what you have to say. So you're telling them why they care about it and that you're going to speak it quickly. Okay? And then make your case and immediately ask them to do something. That's what I do. And that's what you can do if you want to become a trusted advisor, okay? Now, the last thing I want to talk about is this. If you go to the Scrum Guide and you go look at the title, it says the definitive rules of the game. That's what it says. These are the 4 properties of a good game. What's the goal? What are the constraints or rules or boundaries? How am I going to experience progress? And do I have to play, or is it optional for me to play? Okay, so this is also the structure of a good invitation. So when you bring this to the executive and you want them to watch a video or listen to a podcast or read something, you need to state what's in it for them, what rules or constraints you have around the thing, and then how they're going to experience progress, and then invite them. Okay. This is a completely different approach. You're not telling them exactly what they want to hear. You're asking them to stretch themselves and learn something, and find out, do they listen to podcasts? Do they read books? A lot of people just listen to books now. So if the executives, or a lot of executives, are listening to books, and you'd be smart to put them on a podcast if you have that kind of executive. Okay.
So,
okay, let's get those questions in.
Okay, please. This one is good. So how do you determine if a person is toward or away person in shortest time?
Yeah, what you do is you ask them what happens when they get a reward. Like somebody might have got a reward or a bonus or achieved something, and you ask them, how did that make you feel? The toward person will be like, I felt like, ooh, I crushed that and it was so worth it, and I worked so hard to achieve that, and then we did on that day and we had a huge celebration and it was so awesome. That's the toward person. The away person will go, oh, I just felt like I arrived. Like, what a relief. Okay? So in other words, the away person isn't motivated by goals. So ask someone how they felt after a goal was achieved. The away person will just feel relief. It's actually pain reduction. Okay, and the toward person will be like all celebrating about how they crushed it and how awesome it was and how long they waited to achieve it on that day. You can also go to NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and look up the toward and the away orientations. These are motivation orientations. So I'm inviting you, the invite is to do a deeper dive on NLP, away, and toward orientation. We can't cover it in this very brief time, but I'm pointing to it for you, okay? All right, is there another question?
Yeah. One more thing. Eye contact is very hard to ensure in virtual environment. So do you have some more tips how to ensure their intention?
Yeah, you see what I'm doing right now? Do you see what I just did right there? With the camera? Mm-hmm. Okay, all right. So we teach a class, how to teach online, how to manage and lead online. I want to tell you something. I descended from a race of giants. I'm almost 6'5", okay? And I've used that to my advantage socially throughout my entire life. In this environment, it means nothing. Nothing. It's this environment completely levels everyone in their physical presence. And the real key is to get good at understanding how to make your point online, okay? And this is done through leveraging the camera. You can see what I'm doing right now. And you can see how it's very hard to look away, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna learn to do these things. And if you do them, and they're gonna be completely unnatural to you, you are gonna increase your effectiveness as a communicator, and therefore as a leader of leaders, okay? Because one thing that leaders, decision makers, people in authority, understand and respect is communication skills. So I want you to learn about this. When the COVID thing hit, I taught over 150 Agile coaches over 3 months how to do this stuff. And they were all shocked that I didn't teach them any tools and no technology. It was all about the people. Okay, and about the communication across the camera. You need to get good at that if you're going to influence executives. And I will say one more thing about it. You can see how I'm using my hands right now. Ask yourself if that's effective or not. Okay, and ask yourself how often are you using your hands to make your point, to create drama, to summarize your points after you make them, this kind of thing. Your hands and your face play a huge role in your effectiveness in this new world, okay? So I want you to get good at that, and you can contact me on LinkedIn or wherever about our course if you're interested in that. Is there another question I can answer?
Yes. Do you want to answer it now, or do you have?
Let's answer it now. Let's entertain the questions before this thing ends.
Okay. Let's see. What's the toughest thing you had to do with executives in sense of presenting them Agile as a good way of working?
Most executives want to tick the box and just check it off. They want to fund it, but they don't want to actually engage in it. They want to delegate that to someone like you or I, okay? And that's fundamentally not going to work because people are listening very carefully to the signals that the executives are sending, and that kind of paces the rate of change and the rate of transformational goodness, right? So the hardest thing that I do with executives is I work at convincing them that they need to be engaged beyond authorizing the budget, and they need to communicate in new ways, and they need to be consistent and clear in the way that they signal their positive support and their positive intent for the agile change. Most executives are under tremendous pressure. For example, this COVID stuff, they have the same goals they had before, but now they have a whole new set of impediments to reach those goals, and they're being held to those goals. Okay, those goals are the same. They haven't been adjusted for the COVID impediments. So now we have this crazy thing happening where they're under tremendous pressure to make things happen, bring on improvement. So what we don't want to, how can I say this? You're not gonna convince them about agility. You're going to convince them about improvement, okay, through the Agile approach. And the primary way that I do that personally is we don't even begin any discussion about measurement criteria or practices until and unless we get agreement on desired outcomes, like 1 year from today. What's true 1 year from today that's not true now if we're successful? And in those statements, we strip out any references to measurement criteria and any references to practices. And it's just the objectives that they want to reach. And that's where we start. And that's how I do it. And that is not simple. And you have to use the techniques that I'm teaching in this class or in this session. Right now, I'm working with executives in a major software company that you all know the name of. And it took me 4 or 5 months of emails and periodic discussions with them to get them to the point where they were willing to discuss the outcomes first, what they want to achieve, what the improvement What are the desired improvements? So that's all. It's all done through patience, by not giving up, by realizing. Here's the last one. Here's the last tip I want to give people. How many people in this session right now are nervous in front of authority figures? Probably all of us, right?
Yeah,
We're all nervous in front of
yeah.
authority because authority is threatening, right? They could take your job away. Here's a tip for you, and we teach this in this class, acting as an executive coach. When you're nervous, answer the question, am I enjoying the fact that I'm right here, right now? When you have an audience with an executive, you should be very much enjoying that, and you should remind yourself, I am so enjoying being here right now. And that will totally diminish your nervousness and anxiety. To just enjoy what's happening, the fact that you do have a conversation with them, and that you're going to execute on these things. So I teach this class periodically, acting as an executive coach. I teach it with a fellow who has 15 years of experience teaching acting. We give a bunch of books and tools and techniques, many of which we've discussed here. So I hope that you'll use that tip. Remind yourself that you're enjoying it. That will reduce your anxieties. Okay, there you go.
And one more, there is two questions, but they are very similar. And it considers the preparation. So what amount of profiling should you do before you approach an executive? How well prepared do you need to be to approach?
Let me tell you a story about this. The short answer is very prepared. And here's why. You're only going to get in there for 5 or 10 minutes, because if you stay longer than 5 or 10 minutes, you're kind of disrespecting the executive's time. Okay, so you need to get in, make your point, and get out. So to do that, you need to prepare. So let me tell you a story about this. I got a job at a major software company in Boston, a coaching job, and I was brought in by the VP of engineering. He reported to the general manager, who was a woman. And I came in and I was doing my coaching work there, and I needed to get access to her, but I never could. She was always too busy during the day. So I watched her for a while and studied her, and I noticed that one night when I was staying there kind of late, because I had to do some extra work, she was there in her office. So don't you know, the next day I stayed late again to see if she was late again, and she was. Okay, and I determined that she did a lot of work after everyone left. After studying her a little bit more, I also saw that she would sometimes come in at 10 o'clock. Okay, so she was someone who liked to work late. So don't you know, one day I actually darkened her door, and I tapped on her door. I said, hey, could I get a minute with you? She's like, sure, come on, sit down. Then she went on to explain why she gets most of her work done when everyone's out of the office, because there's just too many things to do when everyone's here. And don't you know, I got to speak with her for 20 minutes. I got to sat down, have a nice one-on-one with her. We discussed her late preferences, and she told me anytime that I need to talk with her, just come see her after 6:30. Don't you know, I made the most of that. So you very much want to be prepared. Study and understand who you're approaching before you try it. Do a lot of preparation. It's respectful to study them and to try to look for the best spot to get in and make your point. Okay, so I hope that helps.
Yep. Okay, so we have a couple of more minutes to end of the session, so we can stop with the questions now, and maybe you can just give a conclusion or...
All right. Yeah, let me give you one more tip. I want you to go and learn about police detectives and what techniques they use to get the truth out of people. Okay, so one of the things that you want to watch for is the eye movement when you ask questions. So if I ask you, what is 11 times 47? And you look up this way. Let's see, that's, you come up with the number. Okay, I look this way when I'm calculating something, right? Okay, so you might ask a few more questions to confirm that. Then you can ask me a question like, what did you have for lunch yesterday? And a lot of times the person's eye movement will be different, to be looking up the other way. Yesterday I had tuna fish on sprouted whole wheat bread. So when the person looks this way, they're accessing memory. When they look this way, they're calculating, right? This is very important for you to pay attention to when you in your interactions, not just with execs, but with everyone. It might make you a little self-conscious about what I just taught you, but it's called profiling. And detectives routinely profile they establish a baseline, so they learn, okay, when he looks up and to the right, he's calculating something. When he looks up and to the left, he's remembering something. And that's how you figure out when people are telling you the truth. So I hope that's helpful. The last thing I would say about this is that executives have a tremendous amount to learn. So for example, here's the Stacy complexity graph. Agile is appropriate up here. It's not appropriate down here. Executives need to learn that, right? When we're near the edge of chaos, that's when we use empirical approach. That needs to be taught to executives. Executives need to understand that engagement is essential, okay? If the people aren't engaged, you're not going to have a transformation of anything. This needs to be taught. They need to understand this, okay? They don't usually understand it all the way. And then if you want to engage people, decisions engage people. When people make decisions, that's very engaging and gets in their head. So we have a whole bunch of things to teach executives. Here's another one. Early parts of the Scrum Guide talked about commitment. The team makes a commitment at sprint planning time, right? But that ended up getting weaponized, and the word was changed to forecast, right? Well, forecast implies that we, are guessing, like forecasting the weather. And commitment implies that we know everything that's going to happen and we can predict the future. And neither of these things are really true, okay? A promise is a statement of intent, right, to achieve a goal. So not forecast, not commitments, but promises is what we're after. They sit halfway between forecasts, which are just wild ass guesses, and commitments, which are unreasonable predictions about the future, right? Executives need to understand people don't have everything under their control. They can promise to do their best. That's about all you can hope for. So we have a lot to teach executives about this work and how they can improve by bringing on Scrum, Agile process. You're not going to be able to do that unless and until you're a trusted advisor. And you're not going to be a trusted advisor until you get access. So I hope that I've taught you a few things about getting access, being a trusted advisor, how to get in and make an impact. And when you do this, the beautiful thing about it is you will be influencing system-wide change, not just team-level change. By influencing the deciders and those who influence them, you're actually leading the organization through their implementation of Scrum. And that is your duty as a Scrum Master, to do that and to maneuver yourself into that position. I hope I've given you some tips around that. And I could take a few more questions maybe if we have enough time. How much time do we have? Are we done?
Yeah, we're done. Unfortunately,
Okay.
we don't have any time left, but it
All right.
was excellent. Thank you for the tips.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting. People really enjoyed it. We have more questions. If you want, you can visit Match About Q&A section and see if you have time to answer the questions there.
I will.
But thank you so much for this. I'm sure people enjoy it. I personally have. And as I said previously and in the panel, hopefully next year we will be able to host you in person here with us.
I hope to visit.
Thank you very much again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.